Banlist prediction time. Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and welcome to MST.TV. And of course, I'm going to be giving you guys my banlist prediction. And last time around, never got the chance to do it because it was dropped way too early. I only got it as far as making a banlist R&D, but surprisingly, it was very accurate. Maybe I should just do more of those instead because I seem to do a lot better than just wild predictions. But this time around, I'm going to be kind of explaining it the same way, using the same logic and the same method. Number one is going to be business, new products coming out. Number two would be problematic things that are at every skill level that are just unfair and just not fun in general. You know, game design is a big part of this as well. And part three, in terms of how I'm approaching this, it's gotta be about tournament data and what's being used, overused, and things that are just making the format a bit stale. Although this one is a bit different because this format is constantly cycling. Regardless, that's the approach. And of course, I'm also going to talk about stuff coming off the list because that's also part of the prediction. Konami does, try to rework some of the old cards back into the game just to reshape things a little bit. And some of them are even business based so that it encourages you to play a certain archetype. So whether you agree or disagree, leave it down in the comment section. I'd love to hear about what your thoughts are about, what the ban list should be, things that are problematic for you. Anyways, enough about that. Let's get into some of these cards. Number one card predicted to go to the Shadow Realm is Gimmick Puppet Nightmares. This card is so problematic because number one, it doesn't activate when it causes a lockout. So when expulsion resolves, that's it. You're kind of donezo. It doesn't matter. There's no timing interaction. It's not like Artifact Scythe. Although Artifact Scythe is banned, it's unlike Artifact Scythe where you can't even attempt to negate the card. It's just summon, you're done. So it's expulsion that's a problem, but you can't ban expulsion when you get Albion that kind of does the same thing in the next set. So this is probably the card that's got to go. And compared to like Ra's Disciple, well, at least you can try to clear Ra's Disciple to open up your play again. You can try to dark hole yourself, but it doesn't even matter if you dark hole yourself against this one because there's no counterplay to it. There's no follow-up, and that's why it's not very fun at any skill level. I get that why you want to play this card because it does help you win the game, but even you must admit it is very one-sided and it always leads to an OTK right after, and it's so consistent. Just requires a branded fusion to just lead up to it. Number two card that's probably got to be on the ban list, it's got to be Diablosis the Mind Hacker. This card has some passive effect to everyone, and it also deals some major damage to the opponent before they even get to play. Number one, free extra deck information, so you get to pluck out one of your opponent's extra deck monster, and that essentially gives you information about the main deck that they are playing. So number two, it forces everyone to build their extra deck weird because you have to double up on names just so that you have access to that card later on past the first turn. So that is a very limiting factor. Number three, it enables the 3 to 5 zone lock. Without this card, there is no 3 to 5 zone lock, so Cash-Tier players won't be so oppressive on the very first turn. And number four, it's also surprise deck out. And on that point, the surprise deck out also means that on the very first turn, if you use Rise Heart to banish 3 and then use Diablosis to banish 1 from the extra deck, that means if Diablosis activates, guess what? You're banishing another 4 cards, which means you hit a total of 8 cards. And that makes playing one-ofs also very difficult, so you also affect how people build their main deck. So that's why this card's gotta go, and it will definitely change up the way that people play Cash-Tier. And it's definitely for the better for everyone. Number three is Dimensional Barrier. It's kind of strange to put Dimensional Barrier here because it doesn't really affect everyone. However, for the people that it does affect, it's essentially a turn skip. Whether or not you can consider this as a sack card, sure, you can play 3 copies of it once you side it in. But for decks like Labyrinth, you can have access to it, and you can find ways to actually cycle the card. It becomes very, very problematic if you're stuck in that loop where you just don't have access to anything, and they just keep on using the card over and over. But this card is a lingering effect, and also due to the fact that there's a lack of counterplay. Once it activates, it's lingering. Like, you can't just activate a card like MST or Twin Twister Cosmic Cyclone to clear it. It's going to stick with you, and because we don't have Red Reboot, that's why this card probably can go. And likewise, just like the next card right after this one, Harvey Featherstorm, same logic, full-on turn skip for anyone that needs to use monster effect, and it's just not very fun to play against. Imagine just going into games where you just get your turn skip over and over and over again. It's just not very good. There's an argument to kind of limit this card because Harpies can still use it. It's part of their archetype. Sure, that's part of their key strategy. Allow them to have some power cards that are exclusive to them. But, letting Fluanderies and, decks that have 1 card combo that can lead to full-on OTKs just abuse cards like this. It's just not fun for people to engage against, which is why, people didn't really like engaging against Fluanderies players very much because of cards like this or Barrier Statue of Stormwind. But, control decks will always want their floodgates, but this this one in particular is just zero counterplay, so we're not even interacting with your floodgate anymore. You just did something and you kind of just unplugged our controller. First limited card under buy prediction for sprites is going to be Sprite Jet. I think because it's a super rare one, blue has the ulti, so unlikely that they're going to stop you from playing the ulti copies. The philosophy behind OTS has shifted from time to time, where, you know, before it used to be like the signifier of cards getting banned. This time around, it's probably the signifier of, you know, cards probably staying alive, and I think that is probably a correct assumption, just so that you can keep playing with your shiny cardboard. Since this one only comes in a super rare, then yeah, this does seem like the card to hit, unless this becomes an ultimate rare in the next OTS pack. Then starter would be the one to take a hit. Either way, it's mainly a consistency hit just to pave way for the newer decks. Alternatively, they can also just limit Nimble Beaver, which would, you know, affect your Nimble Angler play, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. And either way, I don't see sprites getting out of this one unscathed. Next, Naturia Sacred Tree. This is a consistency hit, you know, forcing a non-once per turn card to be once per turn. It also cuts off a certain combo line, so you can also see this card being semi just so you can do the line once, but the card is getting abused 2 to 3 times in one turn, and that is a bit much. I mean, arguably you could go for like the Mole Cricket instead, and you can just, you know, answer the Mole Cricket once and that's it, but I think that's a harsher hit in general, because if you get rid of Mole Cricket, there's no way for them to summon stuff out of the deck, and that is extremely limiting, and therefore the Sunflower and all the other stuff that's supposed to kind of pair with the combo, they all get kind of useless. So leaving the usefulness intact but reducing the consistency is kind of the angle we're going with here, so that even if you open with a ton of runic cards and you don't have the Sacred Tree and you don't have any of the Naturia names, then you kind of get a little bit more punished. But that's really it. I want to touch some of the runic cards, but I just don't know how to approach that. You can take like the Master Duel route and just start hitting like all of the cards, semiing them all just to reduce the consistency, and essentially taking cards out of the build. That's more or less what it actually is. It's taking cards out of the build so that you have to fill it with other cards, and you just have to find alternative routes to play it. Next is limited Kashtira Birth. I think this is like one of the strongest cards in the entire Kashtira deck. It is the best follow-up, it is the best extender, it's the best of everything. Provides you with, you know, non-tributing normal summon and the revival, and it's a continuous spell. And it also punishes people for playing Branded Fusion. Like, there's just so much going for this card. It's a bit ridiculous. So limiting it down to 1 copy forces players to, you know, be a bit more mindful when it comes to like managing the resources for this card. If it gets banished by evenly match, you're gonna have to be careful with your Rise Heart and your Theosis to kind of put it back in your hand. But it does make you work for it, and just makes Unicorn a lot weaker by putting it down to 1. It is like one of those cards that can indirectly hurt the Unicorn. Alternatively, you can also limit the Unicorn and then semi-limit this card as well. That's also another option. I don't know which one's more fair, but Birth is definitely a card that it is one of the cards that I think possibly could be touched. And the reason why I'm not putting Fenrir on this list is because, of course, OTS copy. The OTS copy ulti rare just encourages people to play, and also offers like other decks ways to break boards as well. So I don't think that the Fenrir is the right choice. It's probably Unicorn or Birth. Okay, going to the semi-limits, first card is going to be Kashtira Unicorn. You know, I mentioned earlier, Birth and Unicorn, they can be swapped, you know, 1 or 2 to the other, you know, just switch it around. The reason why we're hitting Kashtira so hard, like, what's with all these hits to Kashtira? It's because they just take so much of the tournament top slot representation that it just warrants them to take a bit of a heavier hit, make them a bit more predictable. Right now, they're so hard to play against because they're always on this cycle. You always have to take a wild guess whether or not you can even beat the deck. Like, are they going to open with, you know, the 3 zone lock? Are they going to double a Rise Heart? Are they going to do 5 zone lock? Are they going to do Rise Heart Rush? And all of these counter different counters that you might have preemptively put in there to beat them. So that's what makes them so hard. So limiting that down, it makes it a bit more approachable, and does, you know, tone down their power level a lot, because it just makes it so that they're actually approachable and a little bit more predictable. And then there is Skill Drain going down to 2. This one is mainly just to reduce the reliance on Skill Drain on like trap-based decks like Labyrinth, so that they can play alternative trap cards instead of just relying on Skill Drain to beat down their opponent. There are many ways to interact with your opponent. There's even like hand looping against your opponent, which they apparently don't like doing that option, because Skill Drain is such an easy go-to, and just semi-limiting Skill Drain opens up 1 slot so they can try maybe an additional card and you know, rely on this particular card a lot less. Before I get into the cards coming off of the list, check out MSTmerch.com where you can get yourself some awesome TCG Essentials, such as box dividers to help sort your collection, get your sleeves, competitive tournament level carbon series sleeves, foil sleeves to put up onto your extra deck, or if you want to protect some of your foil sleeves, check out the over sleeves that are also available. There's also mats that are available at MSTmerch.com, so check it out, help support this channel, I really appreciate it. And okay, here are some of the wish list items that I wish could come back off the list, or this is more or less a prediction of what I think could happen. For stuff I'm predicting coming off of the ban list, let's start off with the one Pendulum card that gets released per list. It's got to be Perform Mage Plush Fire. We're not putting 2 Plush Fire. I mean, that is also an option. If you do 2 Plush Fire, you're gonna start seeing a lot more Luster Pendulum. But if they just put 1, it's not gonna do anything, and it's just there to kind of tease us. Maybe the next list they're gonna give us more Plush Fires and maybe eventually lead back to Electromite. But I really think that the Electromite thing is only gonna happen when there's like an archetype that really depends on it, like Valence perhaps, that gets a chance to play it. But that's as far as I'm gonna take a guess on this. But the Plush Fire, you still can't luster into Plush Fire to get a plush summon on the field and then another Plush Fire to hand. So to me, 1 Plush Fire is like a safe choice. It doesn't have much of an impact. Next, Harp Horror. I think this is mainly there to bridge people from Master Duel over. Yeah, it's not Tearlament. I mean, Tearlament is like the current format, but like Harp Horror is just one that's just going to reintroduce people to play the game again. And for people that are in silver and gold, you do see Orcus from time to time. You also sometimes see decks like that being played in like the events. So it might be like a bridge for Master Duel, and that's kind of the only reason. And then there is Premature Burial. This is the one experimental card that was banned for a very long time, and they can bring it back. Here's my argument, okay? Number 1, Monster Reborn is not really played in most decks, so that's 1. Number 2, Deloran and Brio are both errata to the point that they can't really overly bounce this card. I mean, Brio literally can't even touch the card anymore because Brio only affects the opponent's cards. So that's the things going for it. As for stuff going against it, or could be for it, which would be being abused by a soul and like Infernobles, because they do toss a ton of equip spells into the graveyard, and being able to fetch a Monster Reborn is very different than being able to, or needing to hard draw the Monster Reborn. So that's the key difference here. And Prima is just a better living fossil where you can just revive anything. So I guess that's the kind of limitation that we're going with here, but it's a possibility. I'm not gonna outright deny that, hey, it's not gonna come back. It's possible, especially when they want to encourage people to play Infernoble Knights in the future. And then there is Dragonic Diagram. All right, Dragonic Diagram to 2 is to encourage people to play more dinosaurs, more true kings. I mean, we're not getting back Masterpiece because that's just far too format defining. It forces people to play cards like Kaijus, and maybe that's why it can come back. I don't know. I don't think it should, because it really just dominates any decks that require I guess monsters and spell cards, or a combination of 2 cards. It's very hard to play against a Masterpiece like that, so I don't think it's Masterpiece. I think it's mainly for like true king dinosaurs and encouraging more people to try out dinosaurs when Wild Survivors come out, and maybe build something around that. And the final card to come back for me is Speedroid Terratop. This one is mainly to encourage people to play Gold Pride. If they really want to push Gold Pride off the top, giving us like 3 copies of Terratop is one way to do it. It's really broken for that matter, because you get a lot of ways to get into Chariot Carry, because that's a generic rank 3, and then you can just get your combo off without even using your normal summon. And then you can burn your normal summon like way later, and it feels completely different. It's just a way to just allow people to play Gold Pride just completely unhindered, and really just let the deck explode, but mainly for that reason. And besides, we don't have like MX Saber Invoker. We're not in a zoo format. I get that the card can be quite easily abused, considering that there's a very, very little restriction on the card, and other decks can definitely like take advantage of that too, like, I don't know, BA. But you guys can list whether or not that's a good idea down in the comment section. And that's all I got for this video, guys. Do you guys agree or disagree with like my choices here? I mean, it's kind of, I think it's logical, but I kind of want to know where you guys kind of stand, and if you're gonna comment, also comment on what deck you're playing, so that we can kind of get a perspective. As for me, I'm playing every single deck, thanks to needing to learn every deck to commentate. But that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button. If you guys want to see more crazy stuff from MST.TV, we're going to be trying to get more live duels out. Hit the subscribe button, ding that notification bell, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.